Hello, everyone, and thank you for being here today for our webinar. My name is Brad Tompkins, and I am with VMUG. And if we go to the next slide, I want to tell you a little bit about VMUG before we get started here. VMUG is the VMware user group. We are an independent organization that is tightly aligned with VMware. And our mission is for our members to get the most out of their VMware and partner solutions. And we do this through a variety of different ways that you can see there. And we also connect over 150,000 of our members together so we can discuss VMware. Now, today we have got a webinar that is about telco and edge. And I want to talk a little bit about logistics before we get started. We are recording this session, so please keep that in mind. We will be posting this session to the VMUG telco community. So I will put a link in the chat for the community. And you know that you can find not only that webinar, this recording there, but past webinars, as well as the ability to connect up with other people that are interested in learning about the telco solutions from VMware. Now, speaking of chat, we do have the chat available, and we also have Q&A. So if you have a question that you want to ask one of the presenters, please use the Q&A. We will have other people moderating the Q&A so we can get that question to the presenter. And we want this to be as interactive as possible. So feel free to ask that question. And if appropriate, we'll stop the webinar and ask the question, and you can get real-time feedback from these awesome presenters that we have here today. So take advantage of that feature. Use the Q&A, because sometimes it gets lost in the chat, but be using the Q&A. And finally, I mentioned the community. Please take a look at the community and join that VMUG community. Like I said, we will put that link in the chat. And with that, I want to now hand it over to our presenters today. Steve, Henrik, and Vinod will be talking to us. Gentlemen, take it away, and thank you for being here.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Monetizing Security Services by Protecting Endpoints in a Multi-Cloud World. My name's Steve Hoenisch, and I'm here with Henrik Oberg today, and I'll let him introduce himself real quick.
Hi, everyone. My name is Henrik Oberg. I'm a telco cloud specialist based in EMEA.
Yeah, and I'm with VMware myself, and just want to talk real quick about the high-level value of VMware. What we do is deliver the digital foundation to build, run, manage, connect, and protect any app on any cloud and any device, and this is relevant to telco as well. And you have intrinsic security there on the side. One thing we do is build security into the platform throughout. And we'll talk a little bit about more of that later as we go into how to put managed security services out there for CSPs to resell to their enterprise customers.
Yeah, so looking at the agenda, what Stephen pointed to there is that what we're looking at today are basically managed services solutions that CSPs can take out to enterprise customers. So not telco security in itself, but rather enterprise security that the telcos can take to their customers. So we will be looking at how the CSPs can boost their revenue through extending endpoint protection and MDR to enterprise customers. We're going to go cover the changing threat landscape, and so that you can help your customers navigate that new landscape. We look at how implementation of EDR, MDR, firewalls, etc. For cloud computing is done, and also looking at what happens in a cloud-native world, and preparing to deliver extended detection and response.
I do just want to jump in and remind everybody what MDR and EDR stand for. So MDR is managed detection and response, and that does repeat itself quite a few times here during the presentation. And EDR is endpoint detection and response. So we'll come back to those as two kind of key terms here.
Yeah. So what's the opportunity here? And this is the interesting piece, because as we see security and the opportunity for CSPs today especially in growing with COVID as well, with everybody starting to work from home, etc. The CSPs really are that hub that can actually provide additional security to enterprises. And just looking at endpoint security, that's a $6 billion market. And if you look at the whole solutions here, that's more than $12 billion market for the CSPs to start tapping into. And very few CSPs have done that so far. So this also provides an opportunity for the CSPs to raise their value to the customers, to the enterprises, build credibility with them. And since 70% of breaches originate from endpoints, the endpoints that people now bring home with them, with all this working from home, all of that helping enterprises to improve that security becomes vital, and a huge opportunity for the CSP that sits in the middle and connects everything here. There's here also, we'll be talking about our solutions that we offer with VMware Carbon Black Cloud, Secure State, NSX, and Workspace ONE. So we think this is a huge opportunity and a fairly untapped opportunity for CSPs in the market today.
Yeah, and we actually think that those numbers there at the top of the screen on the right-hand side these are very low estimates there. I've seen considerably higher estimates from some security analysts out there.
Yeah,
in terms of the market opportunity.
So if we see some evolution of current security market and the business data at risk here, since 2015 as one example, there's increased damages from ransomware is 15 times higher. I mean, that's just from 2015. 68% of these breaches took months or longer to even discover. A new problem that we're starting to find in the marketplace is that these breaches, these bad guys, they actually dwell in the network for quite some time, just monitoring, not doing anything, until they see an opportune moment to do so. And this doesn't really fit with what the customers think, because a lot of the customers, up to a third of the customers, are pretty confident that their current security solution will actually protect them here, which is actually not the case. Which is so there's a mismatch here in terms of people thinking that they are secure and what's actually happening.
Yeah, again, the world is changing, and sometimes security infrastructure and policies aren't keeping up with the new and emerging threats. And that kind of goes to some of these obstacles to better security. One is siloed teams and the sheer isolated nature of the products that they use make it difficult to pinpoint the problems as they're happening. And then there's also kind of a threat-centric approach. People tend to be only looking for what occurred in the attacks of the past, and that unfortunately doesn't sometimes cover these emerging threats that we're seeing. And then there's bolted-on security solutions. Products are bolted onto the infrastructure and devices they're designed to protect. And these siloed, threat-centered approaches that are bolted on make it difficult to find the signal and the noise at the right time and in the right place to be able to manage security effectively.
Yeah, and looking at we can see so clearly that the current approaches are really not working by some pure numbers here. Like the numbers of months attackers dwell in the network, around 3 months. And just think about that. That's a long time and a lot of monitoring an attacker can have, and actually not doing anything before they're found. The number one hack is stolen credentials at endpoints, and that's the most common breach. And that's where the attack will start, and we'll show you how that actually moves through the network laterally. The cost of breaches is going up as well. $3.86 million. This is quite expensive and quite a lot of money for enterprises to save. At the same time, the enterprises believe that they are safe because they're actually spending a lot on security without actually getting real secure environments for it. And if you look at what they're spending that money on, it's a bunch of products. The number of security products in an environment, 75 on average for an average enterprise customer. So there's way too many tools. So when you start to break out the number of tools that an enterprise customer actually has to deploy, and the various types of tools, and you start trying to build a comprehensive security architecture out of this whole landscape, there's way too much complexity. And it becomes very siloed, as Stephen pointed to earlier as well, where you have separate teams doing separate things, and these teams actually really do not talk to each other properly. Each thinking that they actually have a secure part of that they are looking at without looking at the whole picture. And that complexity definitely undermines security. So what are the teams we're talking about? Well, we can start with identity. So basically the endpoint security and identity management that everyone has. And most enterprises have implemented what they think is a secure endpoint protection and identity systems, whether that is Active Directory or something else. But that is only as secure as the credentials itself. If somebody managed to steal the credentials, they can actually access the identity. But that's one team that handles that. Then you basically have another team that will handle the endpoint itself. We're looking at how to secure the endpoint. A third team is looking at the actual workloads, the software that's being used. A fourth team is looking at the infrastructure, the cloud infrastructure, and a fifth team looking at the network. And these people really don't talk to each other properly. And the tools they use do not actually talk to each other properly either, which makes it even more challenging.
The threats, risks, and attack vectors have also proliferated. This is just a quick picture of the MITRE ATT&CK techniques that are listed on their website. If you're not familiar with MITRE ATT&CK, you should check out their website. They have categorized a variety of techniques, including some emerging ones. And as you know, it's not really intended to show exactly what all of these are in the picture here. It's just to show that there are so many techniques across so many categories that it makes detecting attacks difficult. And that some of these can include emerging techniques.
Yeah, and even though we've taken this screenshot fairly recently, it's already old. This is growing by the day almost. So in a cloud, and especially in a multi-cloud environment, we see that one of the biggest problems that is becoming visible is misconfigurations. And we have all these environments, all these services with their configuration, right? And these are exposed in their configuration as they proliferate across the clouds, across the environments. And then you have dynamically expanding services. So these configuration, if there is a problem with the configuration, is dynamically growing. And so the problem is also dynamically growing to that extent. Then you also have a lot of various teams that build with DevOps teams, and popular, obviously really good, but also popular way to build applications through microservices. And they have a reuse of codes. So obviously, but if you then have a problem with a specific piece of code, that code is often reused in multiple parts, it might be, so that also spreads, and it spreads really fast across the environment. All of these things become much more complex when you do cloud, and especially multi-cloud. And there are many examples of this. So Capita is one of them that you might have heard of in the US, where basically a misconfiguration at AWS led to a really expensive breach.
Yeah, firewall misconfiguration.
Yeah. Looking at
the majority.
Oh,
the majority
ahead,
of security, sure, the majority of these security breaches are often due to insider mistakes, exactly like this kind of firewall misconfiguration. And a sampling of publicly disclosed security incidents as a result of inadvertent actors show kind of the distribution of some of these, of the impact of some of these incidents. So misconfiguration, you can see, is a growing one. Phishing is actually decreasing, but there's also ransomware, which is on the rise, but it's actually not shown on this graphic. So the threat landscape is changing, and these insider mistakes are, to a certain extent, like misconfiguration, allowing some of these to proliferate. Misconfiguration, ransomware, and so forth being kind of key ones there.
Yeah, and especially taking this in consideration, where the current spend, security spend, is with the enterprises, where they typically spend most of the money on protecting from brute force hacking, physical access, and malware, and actually not for misconfigurations by them in themselves. So it's interesting to see that the difference between what's actually happening in the marketplace and what the enterprises are protecting themselves against. As I started previously talking about, what we see is a lot of lateral movement in breaches. So the number one breach is identity theft. And with the identity, what then happens is a lateral movement to actually get access to the endpoint itself. With the endpoint access, then getting access to workloads, from there to clouds and to the network. And they dwell in this environment and allow it to take time. They try to avoid getting seen until they actually see something that's worthwhile.
Yeah, they're opportunistic in that way. They're trying to collect information to identify things that they can exploit for gain, whatever type of gain they might be looking for.
Yeah, and this also goes to show then how we need these various teams, and we need also the different tools to look at stopping this actual
and to be able to work together without silos, because the attackers aren't silos, and they aren't necessarily attacking silo systems. They're at least trying to gain access across silos and move laterally to exploit opportunities that they see. So the response also needs to be able to easily go across teams and different systems.
Yeah. So this is a pretty self-explanatory slide, perhaps, in terms of where we're going from on-prem work devices, and today, and even more so today during this pandemic, we're working from multiple different types of locations on multiple different clouds. We're using all types of services and that complexity obviously goes into the security as well, and making sure how are you actually getting secure, complete architecture. So
these security problems are hard to solve with legacy approaches. There's too many tools. There's visibility gaps, detection gaps, and siloed teams. And all these things drive, like too many tools drives complexity and misconfigurations. And visibility gaps presents a lack of visibility and context for actually doing the hardening and the prevention, the investigation, the response. And the detection gaps miss threats like ransomware and lateral movement and other emerging advanced attacks. And the silo teams with the minimal collaboration between InfoSec, infrastructure network, desktop services teams, and others. And all of these security problems are hard to solve with legacy approaches. You kind of need a new approach, even as a CSP that's looking to put forth security services to their enterprise customers. The enterprise customers are need some help in this regard, and this is why it's such a booming market in trying to solve these problems.
So I guess I actually had a problem with my Zoom. Is the slide still shared?
No, I can just see the Zoom webinar.
Okay.
One second here.
Oh, yeah, I'll have to reshare. Sorry for that.
There you go. I can see all the PowerPoint now.
There we go. There you
Looks
go.
good. Looks good. Yep.
Sorry for that. That's how 1 gigabit internet access actually goes down once in a while. Anyway. So why are companies shifting to cloud native security? Well, it sort of makes sense, because if you're going to have a multi-cloud world that is being used and accessed as infrastructure, you're probably going to have to rethink the security and have a more adaptive security as well. So where you can have deployment and protection in hours and not months when you deploy new security solutions, where you can contain attacks, even if they happen at home networks, that they can be discovered and contained to that environment, rather than to spread over to the enterprise and clouds and the enterprise applications in the clouds. That you have a security solution that scales to millions of endpoints if that is required, and that you improve the analytics by actually having a cloud analytics on the security side, collecting from multiple enterprises, seeing new types of threats that can also then be analyzed and shared and protect multiple customers at cloud scale. So this is where the CSPs come in, because the CSPs connect all of these endpoints. And that, connecting all those endpoints as a spider in a spider web, gives a unique opportunity to sell solutions and security solutions to the enterprise customers. So this is the opportunity.
And we're going to talk real quick now about some of the VMware security solutions and how they provide a solution in this context that can be extended to enterprise customers. The first, we'll look at what the InfoSec team might use. Are endpoints and workloads secured? How can they harden them to reduce the attack surface and prevent malware and ransomware attacks and so forth, and be able to actually detect those attacks and respond appropriately by using VMware Carbon Black. EDR here again stands for Endpoint Detect and Response, to help you harden, prevent, detect, and respond to these types of attacks. And the VMware Carbon Black Cloud provides some of these capabilities. Here's a quick cloud that shows this, such things as next generation antivirus, extended detection response, managed detection, on audit and remediation. And it can work across a variety of clouds and computing devices, including Windows, Linux, AWS, Linux, Mac, so forth. Google Cloud. And just VMware Carbon Black is something of a leader in independent third-party testing. We just want to point this out real quick. There's like some of these third parties have tested it and looked at how it works. We mentioned MITRE ATT&CK before, so and a couple of other of these. Just wanted to touch on that real quick and go to the next slide.
So what can you do with Carbon Black Cloud? Well, quite a bit. First, a lot of identifying risks, and what you see here is they're trying to basically identify and do scans on background processes that are being run on various endpoints, and you can then define the types of endpoints you're looking at and what should be scanned, so on and so forth. And this is just a way to go in and run tests and verify that, and also set policies to, okay, this is what the endpoint security should look like, and then ensuring that that it's also actually implemented. Another screenshot looking at a live query, how you can actually go out and also do live queries for various security threats, whether that's hardening or secure boot status or whatever. Additionally, you get to the point where you start identifying risks, and you can go and, for example, in this slide they show you can go and test Chrome extensions for Chrome browsers. You can run those tests on all connected endpoints, see what they are actually certain, if there are vulnerabilities in certain extensions, that those are, then you can also then start taking actions, what to do if you discover vulnerabilities. These types of queries can also then be run on schedules and automatically called, etc. So you can have constant checking that this is actually working.
Yeah, part of the key here to be able to scale this is to be able to do automated monitoring, and this allows you to do that. You can automate functions for continuous monitoring.
Yeah, and make sure that everyone is secured according to the policy of the enterprise. Also here showing a dashboard view from Carbon Black, where you can see things like attacks by vector, endpoint health, etc., etc. There's multiple different ways to actually go through and get information out of Carbon Black to show that what the health actually is in the enterprise. Here's a little cool example of how monitoring, where for PowerShell, for scripts or attack scripts, in this case, it's actually a PowerShell script that's trying to deactivate security functions in a Windows machine. And you can go out and check this, so you can then run tests on this, etc. And you can then, based on what's found in those assessments, take action on those. In this case, once again, it goes to block PowerShell. So if it found that kind of vulnerability, it blocks PowerShell from running on that endpoint, thus removing the risk.
Yeah, enterprises can use this to customize how they handle prevention across an environment.
Yeah.
To kind of meet their own requirements, their own needs.
Yeah, and then obviously they can see how that is actually working on the endpoints as well. So you can actually see the response in Carbon Black.
Yeah, so once you've identified an attack, you can begin to investigate that and try to resolve it. And there's also the possibility of integrating Carbon Black with various other security systems, SIEM and SOAR and so forth. So you can combine security and IT data into a single screen, and as well as automate repetitive processes. For example, you can integrate with Splunk. And just, kind of across the board here, you can improve identity risk, identifying risk there, preventing attacks, like triggering endpoint security policies to mitigate threats, and detecting and respond, including automating and coordinating response action across tools and teams from a central location.
Yeah, so obviously here we do see how VMware Carbon Black can then interact with other solutions from other vendors as well. So moving on from Carbon Black, the next team where VMware is the desktop services team. So we're starting looking at the end users, which devices should be allowed to connect, trust what kind of posture they have, trust the device, and authentication identity of users. This is part of VMware Workspace ONE. And looking at Workspace ONE, if you haven't done it, is a really nice, consumer simple way to access applications from any type of device and to any type of application. So really consumer simple to enterprise secure. We are looking to also extend Workspace ONE to see if we can use Workspace ONE to provide secure access to the actual telco networks for the CSPs as well. So that's a future thing we're looking at. But you can also connect Carbon Black and Workspace ONE to create a new unique opportunity where you have Workspace ONE with the end user management, but then through Carbon Black, you get threat detection with the modern malware and behavioral threat detection. To combine that and to take certain actions and a merge solution where you use Carbon Black to control how the Workspace ONE works. So looking at this, you basically extend the zero trust security with Carbon Black real-time threat detection. So you have the Carbon Black endpoint standards with antivirus and behavioral EDR feeding into Workspace ONE. And then also obviously getting audit and remediation from Workspace ONE into Carbon Black, providing that device health and zero trust access. An example from with a screenshot where you have where you have Carbon Black actually triggering a threat. So a certain action to be taken if a certain application is found on an end user device. So if that application exists, you might want to remove access to other applications through Workspace ONE. So there are things like that that can then be done through actually connecting Carbon Black and Workspace ONE together.
Right, and this is key to being able to set up automation to be able to respond to things, especially in ways that are customized to your own environment.
Yeah. Looking at the cloud team, and as we said earlier, one of the problems we have in a multi-cloud world is how configuration mistakes. So how do you make sure your public cloud environments are configured and configured securely, so on and so forth? And this is where VMware Secure State comes into play. So with VMware Secure State, you have interconnected cloud security monitoring, and where you have various public clouds that connects through an interconnect cloud security module that you define, and you can get real-time insights to what actually happens with the various configurations that you have on the public clouds. To get context, to correlate various risks, and to also automate actions depending on what you find.
And it also helps the enterprise scale security. And you can use it to do things like evaluate some of these complex cloud environments and various interfaces, especially in a multi-cloud type of environment, and try to detect misconfigurations before they're exposed and so forth. So it adds considerable protection in that way and can be very helpful, especially as more enterprise customers start adapting to multi-cloud usage and endpoints that go across clouds.
Yeah, I mean, for example, I want a good example. If Capita would have had secure state, that misconfigured firewall they had on AWS would have actually been found. So it's possible to find these misconfigurations with a tool like this. So what are the
Yeah, I can talk to some of these multi-cloud use cases of secure state, kind of high level. They're continuous compliance, security posture management, continuous security verification, and threat detection. And you can see that some of these, like continuous compliance, can help address some of these compliance frameworks for security, like HIPAA and PCI and so forth, with real-time auditing and centralized dashboards. And then there's also threat detection, that's Security Operations Center with cloud insights and risk correlation and so forth. And an increasingly important one is going to be that cloud native threat correlation there. And the security posture management, being able to explore assets and relationships and connect the dots among those relationships to be able to detect and correlate misconfigurations and get real-time notification of changes that could expose an attack vector. And then there's also continuous security verification, where you can do things like look at the API and the CI/DC pipeline enforcement and so forth, implement guardrails and auto remediation to kind of help stop some of those problems before they occur.
So with secure state, you have the context-rich security insights, where all the assets are actually presented, all the configurations of the various clouds can be reviewed, vulnerabilities can be assessed, anomalies can be seen. So if there's something strange happening within the connections with the public clouds, the threats and changes. And all of this really fits into our more modern DevOps world, and how we build and use the public clouds within the enterprises to adapt and have a security model that also works in a DevOps way.
Yeah, and it can work across teams and help break down those silos across teams that might hinder security detection and responses, and kind of promoting a security DevOps model there that works across teams for more of a holistic approach with greater visibility.
Yep. Here, one more example from secure state, where basically a rule has been applied that SSH key, and you see here that an SSH key is actually shared between multiple EC2 instances with that should have different level access. So this is a typical way, and you can then obviously take the actions required and even automate the actions required to remove a threat like this or risk like this. You can do context and change tracking. So if any kind of configuration changes are actually done on the public cloud, You can track all of that in secure state and see that what the findings are, and you can then apply, see, you know, does this work with the rules you have, etc., etc.
And this brings us to kind of the final component of this, which is the network team, and asking the question whether the internal network is secure, which of course is massively important now in a multi-cloud world, looking for malicious internal traffic and making sure it's segmented to limit lateral movement. This is something that's key. We'll just look a little bit now real quick at VMware NSX. And so one thing you can do just in general is you can use NSX and some of its related capabilities to replace some of these legacy bolt-on solutions that we talked about before. By doing so, you can improve security and simplify operations. For example, you can replace legacy servers with antivirus from Carbon Black, replace east-west firewalls with NSX service-defined firewalls, and replace load balancers and web application firewall appliances with NSX distributed ALB and WAF. And you know, load balancing is kind of a key blocker for digital transformation for many companies. So it can, you know, help address this. There's some problems there, like it's not scalable, it's not agile enough, it's not flexible. And so this provides a bridge to address some of these problems and resolve them, so you can help enterprises move more quickly toward digital transformation on at the network end.
And this is where the NSX Advanced Load Balancer comes in. So this was formerly known as AVI, which is the L4L7 enterprise-grade app services across multiple multi-cloud environments, which will do that load balancing in a multi-cloud world, but also also looking there as a container ingress service as well, looking at the cloud native world of the future. And with this, you help observe and triage and secure faster in your network, looking at things like, are you being, and this is a screenshot where you can actually see live, and like, are you being attacked? What kind of attacks are they? What's the duration of those attacks? When can you do, for example, also things monitoring like SSL certificates, how old are they? When can you deprecate old ciphers? And looking at overall security in like securities, an average security score assessment. And catch weak misconfigured ciphers, etc. So you do get to see a lot of information with the tools. The distributed firewall has complete L2, L7 capabilities, and as a properly service-defined firewall. And also it provides IDS and IPS for comprehensive threat protection. So you can see context-based threat detection and policy and state mobility, etc.
And so here's kind of a quick overview of some of the service-defined firewall use cases. I'm not going to go into these in exacting detail, but just kind of point out virtual security zones and segments, zero trust microsegmentation, which will become increasingly important with multiple clouds and cloud native environments, regulatory compliance, of course, and discrete appliance consolidation, which we mentioned before, can help reduce CapEx and OpEx with a more simplified architecture and, importantly, built-in security controls.
So,
and
conclusion.
Yeah.
What have we spoken about? Really what we're trying to say that been looking at the current fairly complex security scenario that most enterprises have deployed today. looking at how those are actually not sufficient to protect the enterprises even today, and how the CSPs have an opportunity here to tap in to really help customers, those enterprises, eliminate blind spots and misaligned controls, enable compliance and simplify operations with a VMware offering. So it's a managed services sales opportunity for the CSPs.
So importantly, this sets up the foundation for extended detection and response in the future. And this is kind of the model that it can be useful for an enterprise to move toward in kind of this new multi-cloud world with emerging threats and a very rapidly changing threat landscape. And kind of the keys here is to be able to kind of extend detection across all these different clouds, devices, endpoints, and including on-prem as well as things like Google Cloud and so forth, and be able to kind of do managed detection response, next generation antivirus, and of course audit and remediation when those things are detected. And that all combines to help identify risk, prevent attacks, and detect and respond when they do occur.
There's also here an opportunity to start upselling cloud native security, which is the next frontier. We already see that, and there's an expanding set of customers that are deploying cloud native applications today, and really need to start looking at security DevOps. This is also starting to address their type of needs as well. So there's also an upsell opportunity here for the CSPs.
Yeah, and as containers and Kubernetes are used more in that kind of CI/CD pipeline, you can start moving toward more of a SecDevOps model to be able to have an integrated, holistic approach to addressing security across teams.
The good news here is that there is a team in VMware that works with the CSPs in enabling CSPs to take these solutions to market, as we've said. All the CSP need to do is really work with the VMware sales representatives that you already have, and the field engineers, and they will connect this team in to help you get started and looking at what type of solution you want and how you want to pitch that and take that to your customers.
Great. Well, thank you, gentlemen. I do have a question from the chat here that I want to ask here. It was interesting in the beginning of the slide, you said this was a $6 billion market and that you anticipate that number being even low. So this is a huge opportunity. So the question is, most CSPs will already have some type of security services. Can these services that you've just talked about be added into the existing services like managed firewall or managed ISP to enhance them? Or would the existing services needed to be, changed, upgraded, forklift out and start new? Can you talk a little bit about how a CSP can take advantage of these new services to get some of that $6 billion market?
Yeah, I mean, you're right. It's definitely a lot of CSPs already have some type of solution offering. And this is where you need to connect, to the VMware account team to look at, will these new services that VMware offering, will they complement existing offering, or do they to some extent replace it? And that's going to be individual from CSP to CSP. So that's why we actually don't bring it up in the presentation. A lot of times I think it can be complemented, especially if it's like endpoint antivirus offerings and stuff like that. But it really depends on the offering from the CSP.
Okay, great. So this would be the reason that the CSP would need to reach out to VMware, and then you can have detailed, in-depth conversations about what offering that CSP has, and then see how the VMware solution can mirror what you have, or what the path is for that particular CSP.
Exactly.
Perfect. All right, are there any other questions? If you have questions, feel free to put them in the chat. This is a great opportunity. We have a few more minutes left, so this is a great opportunity to ask Stephen and Henrik questions. And if you want to ask something specific about your CSP, you're welcome to. While I'm waiting on a few more questions to come in or see if they come in, I do want to remind everybody to go check out the VMUG Telco community. I'll put the link on the chat. Again, we will have this recording on that community that you can go back and replay it again. We also have, gosh, I think we've done about 5 or 6 of these now. So there's a archive of past recordings as well. And we know that the telco industry is really set to explode. Again, this $6 billion just in the security market, and that's just a portion of the telco market. So a lot of opportunities for CSPs, and obviously VMware is here to help, and VMUG is here to help as well, for you to connect up with your peers, and we all can learn from each other. I'm a big believer in the rising tides raise all ships kind of things, and you can do that connecting with the community at VMUG. So thank you everyone who attended. It doesn't look like we have any more questions. I'll hand it back to Stephen and Henrik if there are any closing comments that you have.
No, I'm fine. Thank you everybody for listening, and feel free to reach out if you have anything you want to know.
Yeah, thank you very much for attending, listening to our presentation.
And what would be the best way to reach out to you, gentlemen?
Once again, through the sales teams contacts that exist. Is the best way to reach us.
Perfect. All righty. Well, with that, if we have nothing else, we will close the webinar. Thanks everybody for attending. And as a final reminder, this will be on the Telco community. Once this recording gets done, we'll post it up there. So you can look for it there if you want to go back and revisit what you learned today. Thank you, everyone, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you.